That's actually a live picture of me yelling at my fantasy team on an iPhone 1 for whatever reason, because that's the type of season it's been. How are you doing? Let's talk about it.
You got a team, here's a word to the wise. You want to dominate your league? Go to football, guys.
Football, I'm living in a fantasy. Football, got everybody mad at me. Football, cause every game I had to win. Football, I gotta be a champion. Football, I'm living in a fantasy.
It is our week 4 waiver wire show here on the Audible. Cecil, Lammey, Sigmund Bloom, and y'all need some help. And we are here to provide that. Upgrades, downgrades, waiver wire report. It's available at footballguys.com. It is written by one Sigmund Bloom. And we start with quarterbacks, which means Gino, Tyrod, Carson, maybe Kirk. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, first of all, this is kind of a quiet week on the waiver wire. It's not wide receiver is interesting, but again, I love the note you started on, Cease. More and more people I think are starting to realize that fantasy football is senseless. It's really just a ridiculous endeavor, but in so much as we can apply ourselves, as I like to bring up the Paris to Dakar rally, it's not about having the fastest car. It's about being able to keep your car on the road through the end of the race and still continuing to care. And it's a ritual. A lot of this stuff ceases like rituals, especially doing these shows, and that feeds into our actions on the waiver wire. And maybe you can make a few little adjustments at quarterback, starting with Geno Smith. And Geno didn't turn the ball over against Washington. We're going to continue to pick on Washington's secondary, who had 4 injuries. Already they had one of the worst secondaries in the league, and they had 4 injuries. And you saw Geno throw those 3 touchdowns to Trey Tucker. Spoiler alert. We're going to talk about him. Geno this week against Chicago, who after CeeDee Lamb went out, they didn't have as much trouble with Dak Prescott, but that is also a secondary we're going to pick on. And really, I also want to point out that this year, if you look at fantasy football scoring at quarterback, the drop off from the top 12 quarterbacks, and I'm treating some of the teams like Washington and San Francisco that have had injuries at quarterback. So it's like Washington quarterback, San Francisco quarterback, which are in the top 12. The drop-off is pretty steep, and Geno Smith is one of the only players outside of that top 12 who gives you a reasonable possibility in a good matchup of a top 6, top 8 finish. So that's really why he leads the waiver wire, but what's showing you is there's not much out there. Tyrod Taylor, what's interesting about Tyrod Taylor here is that, and as of this moment, I don't think it's changed. Aaron Glenn did not shut down speculation that Taylor could take over the job from Justin Fields. And when we're starting to project the Jets offense going forward, we should project that we're either going to get a competent Tyrod Taylor or a promising Justin Fields. Because if Justin Fields continues to play the way he did in week 2, then we're going to get Tyrod Taylor. And if we get Tyrod Taylor this week, he's probably the best streamer going up against Miami on Monday night. Will we get Marcus Mariota this week? He would be a good streamer against an Atlanta defense that we thought was tough, but maybe it was just J.J. McCarthy. Carson Wentz, also a really good streamer this week. In Dublin, Ireland against the Steelers. Now, we thought the Steelers were a pretty good matchup. The Patriots, who knows? The Patriots might have scored 38 points if they hadn't fumbled the ball away all 4 times and thrown an interception. I mean, the interception was a deflected pass that should have been a touchdown to Kayshon Boutte. So I think Carson Wentz looks like a good streamer. So there are some interesting choices at quarterback this week when you look at, say, like, Jared Goff is facing Cleveland, so you might want to look to someone like Carson Wentz this week. But that's it, Cease. Most of the waiver wire guys are guys we're just looking at on a week-to-week basis. And then again, in Superflex leagues, Jackson Dart could start any week now. And then Kirk Cousins, if not for Atlanta, feels like he should be starting somewhere.
Yeah, let's put a pin in that conversation, and then let's look over the rest of the waiver wire for running back help. And this is where things even get more interesting. Like you said, we kind of got to fast forward to wide receivers, but let's go through these running backs. And up at the top, there are others, but let's spend time just specifically on him, and then I'll toss you the other ones, Bloom. It's Trey Benson there with the bad news on James Conner. Trey Benson, swing your sword. I don't know if I've ever seen you have a bid this high, 75 to 100%.
Yeah, and the 75 really means like the train's leaving the station. Like this is your 100 bid because he's a 3-down back. Now, the Cardinals have not been that successful running the ball, and Trey Benson shouldn't be out there, first of all. But I know that just looking at the percentages in Yahoo, I use that 60% threshold. He might be out there in some leagues. And this is that every down back. If you got Cam Scatterby last week, it looked like he was going to take over the backfield. Then he ends up taking the backfield, at least for a few weeks because of injury. But with Benson, I mean, their backup is Amari DiMercado, who's a passing down back. So they really don't have much behind Benson. And I think they drafted him to be an every down back. They just didn't want it to happen this early in his career as, again, that James Conner injury. It sucks because Conner, fantasy football or not, we root for him.
Oh, always, always. Cardinals fan or not, you're rooting for James Conner throughout every single thing. Now, to the rest of the running backs, which includes Brashard Smith, Woody Marks in Houston, Miles Sanders in Dallas. There's Ollie Gordon, Hassan Haskins, who we saw now, because, of course, everyone's already got Omari and Hampton. So let's talk about the rest of these running backs on what you said. It's a thin week.
It is, and because running back is thin, see, this is usually a conversation we're having in week 10, 11, 12, where, okay, now you want to stock your bench with backup running backs with value, with potential value at least. And I think that Brashard Smith has to lead that conversation because if we're watching the lack of a running game, Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco, then the Chiefs have to be doing some self-scouting here. And Brashard Smith just has so much more juice, and he can operate as receiver out of the backfield. And who is Kansas City going up against this week, Cease? Baltimore. What did the Detroit Lions teach us about Baltimore? You got to attack them on the ground. You got to push them around. And Kansas City, it's almost like Kansas City in a strange switcheroo, Cease. Kansas City is becoming what the Buffalo Bills were 3 or 4 years ago when they just had to rely on their quarterback to win games. And the Bills said, no, we have to have a multifaceted offense. Brashard Smith looks like the only hope for that to happen for them. Woody Marks is splitting the backfield about 50-50 with Nick Chubb. He's a better receiver out of the backfield. The running game hasn't gotten going for the Texans, and you wonder about Nick Chubb with his 2 season-ending injuries the last 2 years, if we might see Woody Marks now poised to take over that backfield and add some PPR value. Miles Sanders got more work last week. I want to say you're drafting the offensive line or picking up the offensive line, but now a second Cowboy starter has gone down. Cooper Beebe, now Tyler Booker, the rookie, goes down with an injury that's going to sideline. We can't have anything nice. The Cowboys offensive line, we can't have anything nice in fantasy football. A marathon through a minefield for everybody. But if Javonte Williams were to go down, Miles Sanders has been playing better, and the running game is still working. We'll see this week as they face Green Bay. That's another team that you probably want to attack on the ground, like Quinshon Judkins showed us. Ollie Gordon getting the touchdown. Devon Achane not exactly built to last at the running back position. Not that Miami is the great offense they used to be, but showing signs of life in the running game. And we'll see what they can do against the Jets again on Monday night. And then Hassan Haskins and a good Mile High Luke botanical extraction. Love those botanicals. Brings up Gus Edwards. We're just going to watch to see because somebody is going to be the next man up behind Omari and Hampton. As of right now, it's Hassan Haskins. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if the Chargers make a move now, knowing that Haskins isn't the third running back, but the second running back.
Yeah, that's my man Luke out there. Hopefully finding some comic book collections for me. Anyway, let's talk about the wide receiver position. Diego has an interesting question about Anthony Richardson there as well. So lots of good stuff here in the chat room. We'll continue on as we go to the wide receivers. This is where things are a little more thick. And hey, if you like them thick, then wide receiver is your spot this week on that waiver wire with Tyquan Thornton, Alec Ayomanor, which we talked about last week. You should have picked him up. Trey Tucker, there's your spoiler alert, Bloom, and that's the first section of wide receivers available.
And if there's a headline here, it's that Tyquan Thornton would be my top priority. Let somebody else overspend for Trey Tucker. And yeah, Geno Smith does throw the ball downfield like a kid trying to win the biggest stuffed animal at the state fair sometimes, but you're not going to see Trey Tucker have this big a part of the passing game when Brock Bowers is healthier. Brock Bowers is 100% right now. It doesn't look like himself, but he's still gritting his teeth through this injury. Hopefully nothing makes it worse. And 2 of those touchdowns came when the game was already over. So garbage time is there, but I don't think that Trey Tucker has the potential for lasting value as much as Tyquan Thornton. Remember, Tyquan Thornton was this close to a second touchdown against the Giants, and you're seeing the chemistry there. So Xavier Worthy, yes, we thought he was going to revive the deep passing game. It's really tough with a shoulder harness to do that. And then Roshe Rice, well, he's not back until week 7. In the meantime, you have Taquan Thornton as the guy that one way or the other is going to have to come through if this Chiefs team is going to have a chance to hang with a team like Baltimore this week. And I mentioned Trey Tucker again. He's going to have one of the highest scores of the whole year for any wide receiver, what he did in week 3. But the matchup against Chicago, you might want to plug Tucker right in there. But I think that his result is less sustainable than Thornton's or Ayomanor's, who's had touchdowns in 2 straight weeks. Clearly, he's got better chemistry with Cam Ward than Calvin Ridley. And it actually kind of works for Calvin Ridley to just like a chess game. Well, Calvin Ridley cancels out the best corner on the other team, and you're going to see Cam Ward get better. Now, we'll see this week against Houston in their pass rush. Tennessee still having a big problem at right tackle with J.C. Latham out. But Ayomanor looks like that's a beautiful thing developing between these two guys. Looks like a steal in the NFL draft, a steal in rookie drafts. And again, as Cam Ward gets better, which he should, Ayomanor's numbers are going to get better too.
Yeah, and that means good things for you. Moving on to the rest of the wide receivers that you'll want to pick up on your waiver wire. Luther Burden finally did something, so we'll take that in account. Josh Downs there as well. I thought Rashad Bateman. Yes, Rashad Bateman's here. Torrey Horton, CSU represent. And those are the next section, and then maybe some lower bid guys like Sterling Shepard kicking around here on the upgrades, downgrades, and waiver wire list.
Yeah, and again, as we're talking about these players, you can see like Thornton was on the show last week. Ayomanor was on the show last week. So we'll see how these fortunes develop. Luther Burden, I know that his touchdown came on a flea flicker, but you can see his natural speed. You can see his playmaking ability, and Caleb Williams is playing really well. Caleb Williams is slinging it out there. So on one hand, this offense is spread out among all these talented targets, but on the other hand, Caleb's playing well. We have a lot of mouths to feed, but you had a big bowl and a big spoon, certainly against the Raiders. You're going to expect that. Hey, Burden is going to be what the heck flex, even only playing, say, 15, 20 snaps, only 3 touches in the passing game. Josh Downs is a little more interesting with Alec Pierce likely out with a concussion. Now, Adonai Mitchell is going to take his place, but then he's going up against the Rams. Rams have one of the best sets of pass rushers on the edge right now, Jared Verse and Byron Young. And I would think you're going to want to dial up more short passing. Josh Downs out of the slot. We know Josh Downs is good. He just needs opportunity. And we know this offense is good, especially the passing game with Daniel Jones. Go down another layer for a few more speculative pickups. Torrey Horton. Dude scored 2 touchdowns last week. One on a punt return, one on reception. He's pulled even with Cooper Kupp in terms of targets and snaps, but I don't know if that's because of a game script where things got away. But Torrey Horton has more to offer this team than Cooper Kupp does right now. And I wouldn't be surprised if, especially with Sam Darnold playing well, that's another thing that we haven't spent a lot of time talking about. But as we mentioned in the recap show, Sam Darnold leaving 2024 and the terrible weight ended behind him. And really, this team, this passing game is looking a lot more viable than we thought. Rashad Bateman finally had a turn, was DeAndre Hopkins, Tez Walker, DeAndre Hopkins not making as much of a big impact against the Lions, and Rashad Bateman working those intermediate zone. He got a nice touchdown on a well-designed play, a short touchdown. And we'll see against Kansas City. Bateman will be at least a what the heck flex. With Sterling Shepard, just watch and see. I don't think we're going to see Mike Evans for a few weeks. We may see Chris Godwin back this week, but if not, Shepard will be the number 2 receiver. He's had steady contributions so far, and in a larger role potentially this week against Philadelphia, he could do even more. And I always love to mention, Cease, that Sterling Shepard's a guy that's had multiple catastrophic, like career-ending type of injuries, and yet here we are still talking about him contributing to a good team.
Yep, here we are, and here we go, talking about tight ends. Now, Sigmund, I know you've done the research, and I knew that when we went to talk tight ends, I was like, well, Aronde Gadsden's going to be on the list, and then I get to talk about the Shrine Bowl, which means people get to talk or have bong rips out there, or take your shot, either one.
Right.
I didn't think Hunter Henry would be on the top. You're telling me he's on that 60% threshold? Hunter Henry?
Well,
There's people out there that don't have Hunter Henry rostered.
right on the edge. He was like 59 or 58%, just in case, because he was down up in week 1, moderately down in week 2, and then big time up as he had the 2 touchdowns in the big game. So yeah, and we'll see about Hunter Henry against Carolina this week. So, and you're right, Cecil, we're wide netting it. But the other top of the list guy, Chigo Okonkwo, is more likely to be out there. And again, Cam Ward sees what he has to offer in terms of run after catch. He's a guy that can take short receptions. Again, with the offensive line, you don't want to have a lot of long developing routes that are going to allow Cam Ward to hang out back there and get sacked, or maybe make a little too daring decision. So let's call some more passes for Chigo Okonkwo, who led the team with 5 catches and 66 yards last week. And again, going up against Houston this week, you probably want to get the ball out quickly, unless you want your poor rookie quarterback to get battered back there.
Yeah, getting battered back there. There's Gadsden, there's Brenton Strange, and that's really about it for tight end.
Yeah, tight end has been interesting this year in that much like last year, no one has really emerged from the pack. We've had injuries, and you're doing a rotation now, and some of these guys are up and down week to week. But Brenton Strange had his second week out of 3 where he led the Jags in receiving yards. Now, the first thing you should say when I say that, Cease, is, wait, what? Isn't Brian Thomas on that team? Isn't Travis Hunter on that team? Right? So it's not exactly a great sign for Trevor Lawrence and Liam Cohen that Brenton Strange is the weapon in the passing game. But, against San Francisco, even though they lost Nick Bosa, I hate to see that. We're always poorer anytime one of the marquee players in the NFL goes down for the season. Maybe that helps Jacksonville pass a little more downfield. Maybe they get some stuff straightened out. But in the meantime, Strange is keeping things going, continuing to move the sticks for them in the middle of the field. And then Oronde Gadsden. And these are our favorite kind of waiver wire pickups. And I saw some mentions, and there's some good ones. You mentioned, like, Diego, I think it was, brought up Anthony Richardson. And I just wonder if would the offense look good if Daniel Jones gets hurt and Richardson takes over. But certainly he's a speculative hold in 2 quarterback leagues. Someone mentioned Kavontae Turpin. Now, unfortunately, Jalen Tolbert was the guy that got the snaps in place of CeeDee Lamb. The other reason I'm not rushing out to pick Turpin up right now is that Dallas has Green Bay this week. So we're not really going to project anybody to be an overachiever for Dallas this week. But Turpin's really interesting. A couple weeks ago, he had 6 touches on 14 snaps before his neck injury. And good things happen when he touches the ball. So you would think that he could be a bigger part of the game plan. So certainly he's a player that we're going to keep tabs on. But we're not just keeping tabs on Oronde Gadsden, because Will Dissly is out. Gadsden gets on the field. And see, this is another one of those situations. 22 snaps, 7 targets for a rookie in his first game.
In crunch time, they were going to Gadsden to move the chains, and he's a freak. So give me a freak.
Yeah. Well, and especially the other thing that, okay, take another step back, because it's kind of a thin week on the waiver wire. We can talk a little more waiver wire strategy. We talk a lot about the players, and we talk about the roles and the interchanging, the flow, the fluidity of depth charts and target shares and so on. But we can always take a step back and say, what about the environment? If you tell me it's someone catching passes from Justin Herbert this year, I'm on board. That guy's going to have a chance to do really good things. I don't even care who it is. If we're going to be talking about Trey Harris, maybe even Keandre Lambert Smith at some point this year, right? Because Justin Herbert's playing well, and he's in an offense now that is tuned to his abilities as a passer. So why not Oronde Gadsden? And I think that, Keenan Allen has been, congratulations to everybody. I missed on this one, because I really thought Keenan Allen was going to retire. Like, if it was like early August and he wasn't in a camp, but he goes back to the Chargers, and the sign should have been that he got like the $8 million contract from them. So they had a big role for him, and he has experience with Justin Herbert, but we didn't know they were really going to lean into Justin Herbert this much. So Keenan Allen and Quentin Johnson are both top 10 fantasy wide receivers right now. Poor Ladd McConkey. It's coming. Don't worry. Trade for Ladd McConkey this week if you can, because it's going to come, especially against the Giants. But if Keenan Allen were to go down, Oronde Gadsden could become an important, very important player in this offense, because, like you said, they're using him in the middle of the field to move the chains. So that trust is already there. We already know they love him. And we know this is an environment that is primed to maximize passing game production.
We are here to help you maximize your fantasy roster. Mad Pull says, give us an update on Dr. Gene. Doing quite well, of course. And I heard a hot rumor, as we do miss Dr. Gene every single day, that on my 20th year of Senior Bowl trips, 20th in a row, which is this year, and then I'm retiring, I believe Dr. Gene and Matt are going to make the trip.
Ooh.
To help celebrate 20. So
yeah,
it'll be nice to rekindle that. Give him a big old hug. Yeah, love Dr. Gene. So
yeah,
got to take a moment out and talk about our buddy and our friend and our pal. He is the great Dr. Gene Bramall. All right, you've been waiting for this moment. Chat room, and we had some people last week that were like, I'm in an uncomfortable situation, but I'm going to do this. And we appreciate that. You know, it's collected consciousness when we do this, Bloom. Let's get crunchy, right? And let's talk about what we need to do next, because I don't know what your record is in your main fantasy league, but mine is not great, Bob. So you got to make some changes. You got to switch it up. And sometimes you have to do it with some authority. Throw it down. So I'm going to toss up the alley-oop. And you all out there are going to hammer away that dunk. When we get to the next part that we need our audience participation, I want you to scream it to the heavens with me, because it is time to cue the chalk T. Sigmund, week 4, shut them downs.
Yeah, you know, Cease, this is an important therapeutic part of the show. And I love the way that you lead us into it, you know, because sometimes in life you just have to say, this relationship's not working for me. And you have the right to say, this relationship's over. That's what we do when we shut them down. Hopefully we all can shut down the things in our life that are bringing us down. Like some of these players, hey, Jake Browning, you know, there might be some big games. Just because a player has a potential for big games, we'll see against Denver. But Cease, what's your forecast for Jake Browning against Denver on Monday night?
Yeah, Jake Browning against Denver probably have more success than you think.
Oh.
Yeah, unless Denver figures it out. Now it's at home and they're desperate because they're 1-2, and it is Jake Browning. So you could say back-to-back bad games. Yeah, it's Denver's defense. It's as Jekyll and Hyde as you can be.
Ooh, well,
yeah.
I mean, I would say this. I would rather start Geno Smith than Jake Browning this week. So if you have to start the guy on the bench, but
I don't trust it. I don't trust him at all. I just know Denver's defense has kind of sucked this year.
Yeah, we're shutting down the Denver defense, the number 1 fantasy defense. We're shutting them down for the team defense leagues. I think that we're looking at, you know, CJ Stroud. What are we waiting around for? Trevor Lawrence. I mean, that's what I'm saying. The drop off. Aaron Rodgers. Here's the headline, folks. Because of the drop off from the top 12 quarterbacks, you might want to just use, before we get to the bye weeks at least, you might want to use the waiver wire as your backup if you need one, because you might be better off picking up some of those backup running backs or doing something else that could bear more fruit, because it's just not happening. Russell Wilson, after his week 2, you know, we're dropping all these guys. There are a few quarterbacks worth holding. We'll get there. Dylan Sampson falling way behind Jerome Ford. We can shut the door on that. Oh, man, Najee Harris. I mean, I really hate to see this. And he was out playing Marion Hampton. And this is another reason why fantasy football is senseless. Because Najee Harris, I think he was on his way to becoming like the 60% guy in a 60-40 backfield, the way he was playing. And then he tears his Achilles. And then Marion Hampton finds his game, especially as a receiver. And a pick that was looking like a bust becomes one of the best picks in fantasy football. So this is why we also tell you that perseverance is important. Is it important to carry Tyrone Tracy 2 to 4 weeks with the shoulder? Cam Scadaboo is probably going to relegate him to the backup. Now, maybe the Giants offense could become better with Jackson Dart, but unless you have long benches, it's really hard for me to justify carrying an injured backup running back, because that's what he is now. So, you know, I'd rather have Miles Sanders or Woody Marks or one of those guys we talked about than Tyrone Tracy. Stephon Diggs. Where's Where's the beef? There's one that comes back from the old days. Where's the beef? Because everybody's playing like 50% of the snaps in the Patriots. Hunter Henry. There's the beef. There's just not anybody in this passing game at wide receiver that we can count on week to week. So what are we waiting around for here? I just don't think it's going to happen. I think Joshua Palmer's another player where at any given week he could have 2 long touchdowns from Josh Allen, but the Bills are committed to the run and to balance. Bray Davis, by the way, another good guy to stash on your bench if he's been dropped, because he would slot right in behind James Cook as the establish the run guy for them. Hunter Renfrow, not even the primary. Bryson Tremaine, first time we said his name on the show, I think, Cease. He was getting as many snaps as Hunter Renfrow last week. Cease, what do you think about Troy Franklin as a potential shut him down?
No, he's in the next section.
Okay, well, he did get the snaps, so sometimes, and hey, they are buddies going back to Oregon. And then Jatavian Sanders, if you were holding on to him after his garbage time feast in week 2, went down with a high ankle sprain. Yeah, so now we get to the other side. You're going to break off some relationships, Cease, but the others you're going to say, maybe we can try again.
Yeah, and you say, "Where's the beef?" From Andre Stevenson says, "Where's the ball?" He fumbled it. Our buddy Carl, if you've got Yoda in a suit, you're going to make this show. He says, "I'm not a religious man. Relegare, to bind, to tie to what once was." But let's be spiritual, Bloom. Let's be spiritual when it comes to Chris Godwin. Because the reports last week were, it's not week 5 or 6, baby. It's week 4.
It's on, yeah.
So we are watching that with great intent, especially with Mike Evans banged up. Chris Godwin, everybody. Chris Godwin. So, throw it up there to you down with the G-O-D? W-I-N. Yeah, you know me. And, after shut him down, we know there is another side. And yes, this is where Troy Franklin is. He's going to be fine, everybody. This is where you hold on. And who are those players in week 4?
There are some. I'm waiting to see what happens with Justin Fields because he has that high ceiling every week. And the Jets actually have an easy schedule starting with this Miami game on Monday night in terms of the defenses that they're facing. So if Justin Fields gets another chance, he can still really help our fantasy teams. Michael Penix, again, Washington already had a poor secondary and they had 4 injuries in the secondary. If Michael Penix doesn't get it going this week, maybe we'll talk more about Kirk Cousins. I know Cecil said put a pin in it, so we are going to come back to that. And hopefully we don't, because Michael Penix has such a great game. And if we do, it's for trade rumors. And then Cecil, I'll toss this one to you, our guy in Denver, Bo Nix. Bo Nix a hold on.
Yeah, Bo Nix is a hold on. It's coming. It's coming around again.
Yeah, well, the plays were there. The execution was there from everybody but Bo Nix. So
you wouldn't expect three touchdown passes last week. 3 of them.
Yeah. So Sean Payton's doing his job. Everyone else doing their job. It's probably going to come for Bo Nix. He would not be shut him down. Bill, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. I still think that he's got the most juice, the most to offer of these 3. They're going to continue to use these 3 plus Deebo Samuel, but don't get too discouraged. Score a touchdown again. Hold on to Tyler Algier. Remember, he can play. And if Bijan Robinson goes down, Algier immediately, he'd be a 75% pickup, right? So already in this season in week 4, we're talking about backup running backs. Algier leads the way there. I think that there's some players that we're going to hold for some players and drop for others. So we're going to hold Romeo Doubs. We're going to hold Kayshon Boutte. We're going to hold, like you said, Troy Franklin. Now, if that's who you have to drop to get, say, Taquan Thornton or Alec Ayomanor, then I don't feel like I'm missing out on too much if I drop Dobbs or Boutte. Keon Coleman, make sure to hold on to him. The ceiling games are going to come, maybe not in a matchup against New Orleans this week, but the ceiling games are going to come whenever we see Josh Allen have to pass more. This is again, doing these rituals, going through the calendar, experiencing time on NFL calendar with our people, Johnny Blue Skies out there. People don't know about Sturgill Simpson, the transformation he's had.
He was just here at Red Rocks last week.
This is Red Rocks. This is the Edge. This is week 4.
This is the Audible. He is Sigmund Bloom. He's a gem, everybody. Mint Gem Collectibles. Gem Mint Collectibles, by the way. He is Sigmund. You follow him on all the socials at Sigmund Bloom. I am at Cecil Lammey saying make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you never miss a vid. And we appreciate you all very much. We are the Audible. 20 years of this show. Thank you out there. Thank you. Stay tuned. And would you please stay frosty?